Sweet crafty friends, it's Nikki here with Stillwater's Wreath Designs. Today we're going to create a super cute St. Patrick's Day front door wreath. Let's talk about some of the supplies we'll need. You're going to need either to make your own work wreath form, or you can purchase a work wreath form. I believe this actually came from Craft Outlet. It's a 15-inch work wreath form. You're going to need your cutting mat or a tape measure or ruler. 10-inch Deco Mesh with your choice of color. I'm going to actually use these two since we're making a St. Patty's wreath. You're also going to need a decorative sign of your choice. And then your ribbons of choice. I've actually chosen 2.5-inch wired ribbon and 2 1.5-inch wired ribbon. You can certainly choose any combination that you would like, friends. I typically go with 2 2.5 and 2 1.5-inch. Just make sure that your ribbon is wired. And of course, the tools you need. You're going to need a good pair of scissors or your rotary cutter, either tape measure or self-healing measuring mat, and your glue gun and glue sticks. You're only going to need your glue gun and glue sticks just briefly while you adhere the ties onto your sign. So go ahead and get your glue gun heated up. I'm just going to take my sign here, and I forgot to mention, folks, you're also going to need a couple of mounting hooks. I get these in bulk from Deco Exchange, but you can pick them up in any craft store. You can pick them up on Amazon, wherever you'd like. And so to figure out where your mounting hooks need to go, you can actually just flip your sign upside down and lay your frame on top of your sign so that you can see where the frame is going to meet the sign. And once you know where that is, friends, just pick it up and pop that mounting piece down. This is actually what they look like. They're probably an inch by inch. Yes, they're an inch by inch square. And then you can see on the sides, you can actually insert your floral wire or Chanel stems through there to affix, whatever you're affixing things to. And the bottom has some 3M sticky tape to help hold that in place. So go ahead and figure out where you're going to plop your sign at and get those mounting squares in place. They don't have to be exact, friends, because you're going to be running a Chanel stem or pipe cleaner through there. Once you have that in place, your mounting pieces in place, I always like to just run some glue right along the perimeter of that mounting square to really just ensure a good stick. We don't want our sign coming off. So this is just a way to help secure. And once you get that glued down a bit, you're done with your glue gun, so you can go ahead and unplug it. All right, guys, so go ahead and take your sign and just set it off to the side. It can be drying while we do other steps with our wreath. Okay. All right, guys, let's get our wreath work frame back here. Go ahead and cut off your tag. So this is 10-inch Deco Mesh. This particular roll is actually a soft poly mesh. It doesn't look like I got it from Craft Outlet or any of my other vendors. I'm not sure where I actually got this one at. But at any rate, it is 10 inches. And we've also got some green, of course. So get your Deco Mesh open. So I'm just going to set this off to the side. I want to show you something. You can use your self-healing mat. You can use a tape measure, a ruler, a piece of tape that you've measured out, some sort of measuring system. You want to basically just be able to measure out your poofs that we're going to make with this Deco Mesh. So just unroll it a bit, push it off to the side, and you're gonna find your starting point. We'll just go ahead and start over here on the edge here. And we want our poofs to be 10 inches. And the reason why we want to measure them is because you want your poofs to be essentially the same size. Don't worry that your edge isn't perfect. We're going to scrunch that up anyway. And so once you've measured 10 inches, what you're going to do is just crawl and gather, crawl and gather, crawl and gather your mesh. And go ahead and get your ties here ready. I always like to just tuck it under a bit because I feel like it always likes to fray. I'm sure that's typical for you as well. So go ahead and take your Deco Mesh and open up your first set of ties on the bottom tier. So you've got a bottom tier, a middle tier, and a top tier. I believe there's 18 ties in total, and there's none in the middle row. It's just bottom and top. We're going to start on the bottom level. So open up your first set of ties, get your gathered up mesh stuffed way down at the base of that, and give it a couple of tight twists just to get that in place. Now here's where the measuring really comes into play. Let me just push some of those ties up and over, friends. So wherever your tie is gathered, that's what you're going to push on the 0 mark, okay? And then go ahead and look for that 10-inch mark. And when you find that 10-inch mark, start crawling up. You've got yourself your first poof. Spin your work frame around. Open up your next set of ties on your base. Place that mesh way down into the very center and give it a couple of tight twists. And we've got our first poof. You have to work it a little bit. We'll wait and do that in just a second, but I just like to take the edges and make sure that they're curling under. This is called the poof method, by the way. So now that we've got our next poof in, we're going to take that, our most recent set of ties, put that on the 0 mark. We're going to look for that 10-inch mark again. And then once we found it, pinch and gather, pinch and gather, pinch and gather, or just crawl it up. Twist your work wreath frame around a bit. Go ahead and curl your mesh under. And take that pinched piece that you've just measured out and place it down in that center of that tie, pressing it all the way to the base. And give it a couple of good ties just to keep it in place. Now we're going to take our tie, put it on that 0 mark again. I probably should have stood these ties up, friends. Okay, so we're on the 0 mark. We're finding our way to the 10-inch mark, marking it with our fingers and just crawling it up. Let me roll out that mesh a little bit. So we've got a good pinch in our fingers here. We'll go ahead and just curl those edges under a bit. Open up your ties. Place your mesh way down to the center. Give it a couple of tight twists. We're going to do this all the way around this wreath base, friends. So go ahead and continue to do this. And then once we get all the way around the bottom level, we'll take a break and I'll show you how to move your poof rolls from the bottom layer up to the top. I'll meet you back here. All right, friends, so we have made it all the way around that bottom layer. We've just got one more jump from our last set of ties to our first, and we're going to do the exact same thing. Go ahead and make your poof. So we'll find that 0 starting mark, find that 10-inch mark, go ahead and make our poof. And then we're going to come back to this set of ties. You're going to want to carefully untie until it's just got one layer left of the tie. Shove that poof all the way to the center of that base there and give it a couple of tight twists. And we've got our last poof for the bottom row. And then what you're going to do, friends, is basically the same exact thing for the top row that we did for the bottom row. So we're going to just come up to this top row. This time I'll be smart about it and stand up those ties and get them out of the way. There we go. And so you're going to just bring up this Deco Mesh up to this next bit. You're not going to make a poof, you're just coming straight up. Give that 1 or 2 tight twists just as a holding place. And then eyeball that, get that on your 0 mark. Come to the 10 inches and crawl it up. You'll have to fight those ties a little bit, friends. It's a pain in the caboose, but certainly doable. Just like we did on the bottom rung, shove that poof down to the center of your ties. Couple of tight twists. And then we'll just keep working our way around. I'll meet you back here once we've finished. All right, friends, we are to the last poof. So let me tell you what we're going to do with this particular poof because it's the end of the roll and because Deco Mesh likes to fray, we're going to cut it a little bit longer. So go ahead and find that 0 starting point. This time measure out 12 inches. Go ahead and gather. Once you've gathered, keep your fingers pinched together and just kind of eyeball out a couple of inches or even hold it up against your measuring area. And go ahead and cut off that Deco Mesh. And then what we're going to do is just take that and kind of fold it under and in to really reduce that fray. We basically want to minimize exposure to that cut edge. So once you've done that, go ahead and place it in your tie, give it a couple of super duper tight twists, and that should really prevent any fraying. So now we've basically got our entire first layer done to our wreath. And so you can see that quickly took our 15-inch work wreath frame to probably about 24 to 25 inches. But it's still very light and airy. If you can see, I'm not sure if you can see that or not. It's basically see-through for the most part. And we don't want that. We do want it to be lightweight for our door, but we don't want it to be see-through. So at this point, you could do a couple of different things. You could either continue to use the white Deco Mesh to make curls, or you could choose a complementary color, which is what I've done. Since we're making St. Patty's, I'm going to change up our mesh a little bit to the 10-inch mesh. And so I'm going to take this work wreath frame that we've been working on and set it aside for a short bit. And so now I've just got my cutting mat. You can also, again, if you don't have a cutting mat, just use your tape measure and some scissors. That'll be just fine. I'm going to use my self-healing cutting mat and a rotary cutter. If you've never used a rotary cutter, friends, it's basically like a little pizza cutter. And it lets you cut mesh, a lot quicker and with a little bit more accuracy. I actually didn't grab one of these or discover these until I had made, gosh, probably 50 wreaths or so. So if you don't have one, just of course use your scissors, but these are super handy. Found this on Amazon. So take your 10-inch Deco Mesh, whatever color you've chosen, and we're going to measure out 12-inch squares, 10 to 12 inch. Now this one I'm going to go ahead and cut off the edge just because I had used this previously and it's looking a little bit ragged. And as you can see, Deco Mesh likes to curl on itself and follow the flow of the roll. And so you want that to be face down, just so you're not fighting it. So find your starting point on your self-healing mat or using your tape measure and scissors, and you're basically going to cut, 18 10 to 12 inch curls. And I'm just going to kind of randomly go between the 10 and 12 inches. So cut yourself 18 of those, put them off to the side, and then I'll meet you back here. Okay, friends, you should have 18 10 to 12 inch pieces of your next Deco Mesh cut. I do want to add, the recipe I'm giving you or the method I'm giving you is in fact for a 15-inch work wreath frame that has 18 ties. You can certainly scale this up or down based on your wreath frame size of choice. So of course, if you have a smaller frame, you would use less. And if you would have a larger frame, you would use more. But the same method applies to any size. Just scale up or scale down as you need. Okay, so we've got our poofs all added into the work wreath frame, and now it's time to add our curls. And so a curl is just like what it sounds, friends. So you're just going to take your piece, and you can see it's already wanting to naturally curl in on itself. That's all you're really doing. You're just going to lay it down, curl side up, and roll it a little bit tighter than what it's wanting to go, and just create a curl. Just like that. And so I would say that's probably 1.5 inches to 2 inches in diameter. You really can't mess it up. There's no right or wrong way to make your curl. The only thing I will tell you is that when you put your curls into your wreath base, remember I told you earlier that Deco Mesh likes to fray. So you're just going to take the edge side and keep it down just so that it has minimal exposure. And it doesn't matter if you start on the top rung or the bottom. You're going to add 1 curl to every single tie. And so what you're going to do is find your first tie, doesn't matter where you start, untwist it from where we had twisted it with the first piece, being careful that it doesn't pop out. And right in the middle point, just add that guy in there, pushing it way down to the base in the center, and then giving it a tight twist or two to hold its place. And we've just added our first curl. Let's do one more together, friends, and then we'll speed through this next step. So again, you're just going to take your pre-cut 10 to 12 inch piece, letting the curl side be up, and just curl your piece in. You're making a curl here, semi-tight. You'll basically want that curl at its widest point to be 1.5 inches to 2 inches in diameter. Find your next tie and keeping that seam side down to basically reduce the exposure of that cut from the fray. Open up that next tie, being careful that your poof doesn't pop out. And right in the center of your curl, shove that center all the way down to the base. Take your ties and give it a couple of good tight twists as a holding place. And now we've officially added 2 curls. So go ahead and work your way around the top and bottom, adding 1 curl per set of ties, and I'll meet you back here. All right, guys, we are adding in the very last curl to our wreath base. And so this is what your base should be looking like at this point. So it's getting fuller as we go. And that's all of the Deco Mesh that we'll be using for the wreath. And so now it's time to prep our ribbons. So go ahead and sit your base off to the side and go ahead and pick out, or pull up, I should say, your ribbon choices. I had to move my mat, friends. I'm sure you discovered, I forgot to mention earlier, that Deco Mesh really, really likes to stick to itself and can be a nuisance. So there's just no way around it. All right, guys, so we have, remember, we've got 18 ties on our wreath base. And so you want 2 ribbons per tie. So however you want to mix and match it, you know, just do the division based on your ribbon choices. Because I've got 4, I'm going to be putting 1 1.5 inch ribbon with 1 2.5 inch ribbon. That's just going to be the method that I'm going to follow, but you can mix and match them however you'd like. Excuse me, you can add 3 ribbons per if you'd like. You would just cut more. So the guidance that I'm giving you today would be assuming you're putting 2 ribbon tails per tie. Okay, so just increase or decrease based on your preference. And you're going to want your tails, if you are in fact using the 15-inch frame such as I, if your frame is smaller, you know, decrease it by 1 inch or 2. If it's larger, increase it by 1 inch or 2. So remember, everything is scalable. There's really no right or wrong method. And so what we're going to do is measure 10 10-inch tails. And so I'm just going to find my 0 mark, come up to the 10-point mark, and then where that's at, I'm just going to put my finger there, mark it, fold it in half, and then I'm going to fold it in half on itself so that we've got 9 pieces. So there's 2, 3, and it doesn't have to be exact, friends. Nobody's going to be tape measuring your wreath. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Once you've got 9, go ahead and cut your ribbon off and put that kind off to the side. And then what you're going to do is just find the center of your stack, slide your scissors up in that center and cut it in half. Flip it over and cut it in half again. And now we've officially got our 9 pieces. And so at this point, you can choose if you would like to dovetail your ends. You can leave them straight like this if you'd like, or you could cut them at a slant. I think for this particular wreath, I'm going to cut them at a slant. But so to cut them at a slant, you would simply take your scissors, come down on the edge about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch, and cut on the angle up to the corner. And it will look just like this, okay? And flip it over and do the same thing. Depending on the quality of your scissors, you can probably do 2 or 3 at a time. That's how mine work. But certainly judge the quality of your scissors. And you're going to want your angles to be going the same way. So again, coming down 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch, placing your scissors on the edge and cutting up to the corner. And now we've got both ends angle cut and going in the same direction. So to dovetail, which quite honestly I dovetail more often than I don't, but today I think for this wreath I just feel like making it angled. But let me go ahead and show you how to dovetail your ribbon if that's your preference. So after you've cut your pieces, they're going to be horizontal, just flat across. To dovetail, you're going to fold your ribbon in half, and again, do as many as your scissors will allow at a time. Once you've folded it in half, you've got the folded side that's closed and the open side. So on the fold, you're going to come down about 1/2 inch and cut up to the corner. And remember to do it on the fold. And then once you open that up, you've got this pretty little V, or what we call a dovetail. So again, you fold it in half, place your scissors on the side of the fold, come down about 1/2 inch or so and cut up on the diagonal to the corner. And then you've got your dovetail. So what we're going to do at this point, friends, we're going to go ahead and get all of our ribbons cut and prepped. So I'm going to make sure that I have, since I've got 4 different ribbon types, I'm going to make sure that I have 9 of each at 10 inches in length. And then once I've cut them, I'm going to cut them on the diagonal, so that part is done. And once we have all of our ribbons cut and prepped, I'll meet you back here. All right, friends, so now we've got our ribbon all prepped and ready to go. So you've cut 9 of each of your 4 different styles, or however that math shook out for you, and you've cut the ends as you wish, either at an angle, straight edge, or dovetail. And now it's time to choose how you want to partner up your ribbon. Remember, for this method that I'm showing you, we're going to be adding 2 tails. That's what these are called, 2 tails per tie. And so I've decided to pair up the 2 clover leaf ribbons and then the 2 more simpler patterns together. So figure out what you want to pair with what and get those set off to the side. And then if you're using a self-healing mat, you can get it out of the way if you'd like, or just work on top of it. But you are finished with that. And so now it's time to add the ribbon. So all of our ribbon can go in both directions, and so we don't have to worry about the direction of our ribbon. I'm trying to see if I don't have anything handy. Let me just check, friends. Hold on one second. Okay, so this ribbon scrap shows you a one directional type of a ribbon. And one directional means this ribbon is only meant to go one way because it's got a graphic on it, you know, that we need to keep right side up. Obviously, you wouldn't want to put it in upside down. So if you've chosen ribbon that's one directional, meaning it's only meant to go one way, just be mindful as you're putting your ribbon tails in about where you want the top to be so that your ribbons are always facing the same way. So in this case, if this were the bottom, we would place this ribbon, you know, so that the truck is facing up. And if this were the top, we would make sure it would be laying like this and not, you know, not upside down. If you don't have one directional ribbon, that's certainly not an issue, but I just wanted to point that out in case your ribbon choice is in fact one directional. Okay, so remember, every set of ties is going to get 2 ribbons. So let's go ahead and insert our first 2. I'm going to actually alternate back and forth so that we've got a good flow. You can place your ribbons together however you'd like. So I always place my 1.5 inch ribbon on top of my 2.5 inch ribbon. I typically just eyeball to figure out where the center was. If you're not good at eyeballing, you can just fold it in half until the ends meet, and then that'll tell you, you know, where your center is. But either way, once you've put one ribbon on top of the other and you've identified your center, you're going to kind of pinch and pleat, pinch and pleat, pinch and pleat until you have something that looks similar to a men's bow tie. So once you've got that pinch and pleat and you're not going to let go, just go ahead and take your fingers and kind of push it down over your thumb so that it's a little bit of a V. And then find your first set of ties. I always start at the bottom. It doesn't really matter either way. You can either open it up to place these in or just put it on top of where you've closed the ties. That's what I'm going to do. So shove that ribbon grouping way down in there to the very base of where your ties are and give it 2 or 3 really tight twists, because this is the last addition that we're going to add, and so that's basically our closure at this point. And once you've done that, you can then do a couple of different things. You'll have a couple of inches left over of your ties. You can either curl those under and tuck them in. That's what a lot of people do. Or you can just snip them off. That's always my preference, but it doesn't matter. You just want them out of sight. If you do cut them off, then of course you can just pitch them, because then we're done. And toss those away and move on to your next. And so since we use the shamrock ribbon here, I like to alternate. So I'm just going to twist my base, choose my next ribbon combo. I'm going to place that 1.5 inch on top of the 2.5 inch. Figure out my center, pinch and pleat, pinch and pleat, pinch and pleat until I've got this cute little men's bow tie. And once I have that, I just kind of fold it over my thumb just a little bit. This is why you like to use wired ribbon, friends, because it'll hold the shape that you want it to. Go ahead and place that down into the base of your next set of ties all the way down. Give it 2 or 3 super duper tight twists, and then either curl them under or trim them off. We're going to do this all the way around the top and bottom. Kind of fluff your ribbon a little bit as you go, however you'd like. And once we've got all of our ribbons in place, then I'll meet you back here. All right, friends, we have completely loaded this wreath with ribbon. All of our curls are in, our poofs look great. It's really coming together nicely, and it's really pretty good size around. Let's actually check that diameter. So it's about 24 inches in diameter and about 6.5 inches in depth. So it turned out to be a really good size. So we've added 2 ribbons to each set of ties, and we've either curled in or tucked away, or trimmed, I should say, the remaining bits of those ties. And so now the last thing that we need to do is add our sign. And remember, at the beginning of this tutorial, friends, we had actually determined where we wanted our mounts to go, put them in place, and we ran a bead of hot glue around the edge just to really give it that bit of extra security. And so now it's time to add it to our sign. You've got a couple of different options on what you use to affix this to your sign. You can either use floral wire. If you do use floral wire, I recommend that you use the thicker gauge. You can actually buy at any craft store, Amazon, online, all kinds of places, pre-cut, thicker gauge, floral wire. Forgive me, I popped off the top, so I can't tell you what this gauge is. But you can use that. You could also use chenille stems or pipe cleaners. Because it's so thick, I don't think it's really, you would need to marry up 2 of them. And so by marrying, I'm going to use some leftover chenille stems that I had used previously. But to marry 2 stems together to make them longer, you overlap one set of ends by 1.5 inches to 2 inches. Just make a little X, and then twist, twist, twist all the way down on one side, and then do the same on the other. And that will give you a nice sturdy marry between 2 ties that's a lot longer. So if you're going to use chenille stems or pipe cleaners, go ahead and use that, or marry that, I should say. I'm actually going to use some zip ties, I believe. Let's see if they're long enough. Okay. So what you want to do is find your center. I'm going to go on the other side, friends, so that I can work around my camera, and then I'll show you what I've done. So it's going to be upside down for just a minute. They may not be thick enough. I may have to go to a wire tie. We shall soon see. Wow, my kiddo must be home. My doggy's barking. Yeah, it looks like the zip ties that I prefer to use. I don't have any of my extra long ones. So I'm going to go ahead and use that floral wire that we had talked about earlier. Forgive him. He's, you know, got to keep the neighbors in check and whoever else might be walking by the house. Okay, just real life, guys. So back to the pre-cut floral wire. If you can see on the side, there's actually holes, one on each side, so you can go in any direction that you choose. So just go ahead and slide that in. Find your halfway point and then pull them up together so that they're uniform. And I always just then give it a couple of twists at the bottom here, just so they don't fall off or get squirrely. And it doesn't matter which way you run it because floral wire is forgiving and you can just twist it how you need once you're ready to add your sign. Oh, you gotta love him. So I'm going to add this sign. You're just going to lay it flat, poke your wires through, and then tie them, twist them, I should say, right around your frame. I'm sure this is off camera. I can't see my camera right now, guys. Forgive me. So typically what I do, I'll add one side, get it twisted. You want it to be secure, but you don't want it to stick in so far you've lost sight of it. So if you can see that, I've got it around, I've got it around one set of ties and then that middle piece. And I'm just going to give it a couple of twists. Not too many in case I have to change it. Nope, that's just the right depth that I like. So now I'll take the other side, make sure it's centered. I'm just going to run that right down in there. And after I do that, then I'll flip it over. Hang on to your sign so you don't lose your wires. Flip it over. And then you can kind of tell if you're in the center by making sure you have the same distance on both sides. Give it a couple of twists, not too many, just enough to hold it. Flip it back over. Make sure it's centered, which it is. That's awesome. And then you can come back and really give it some good twist. I'm going to actually use my needle nose pliers. You can use your hands. But when you make a lot of wreaths every day, you really need to preserve your poor hands. So I've given that probably 10 really good twists. I'm going to trim off that extra. And then this stuff can really be pokey, so you want to make sure it's not sticking out farther than the outer rim of your base because you don't want to scratch you or your customer's door. But in addition to that, I like to take my needle nose pliers, hopefully you can see that, and just curl that guy right under and get rid of that pokey. Okay, we'll do the same thing over here. Not sure which way I twisted it there. Yep. All right, and then just like the other side, we'll trim off that extra bit of floral wire. And then take your needle nose pliers and just really curl that guy under so it's not poking anybody, doesn't scratch your door, doesn't poke your fingers when you move it around, and then you're all set. It looks fantastic. I'm really pleased with how this turned out. I will include an extra picture at the end of this video just so you can see it hanging on a wall. Friends, if you are crafty and love to decorate and like to make wreaths, please make sure you subscribe to my channel and make sure you hit that bell so you get alerts. Thanks, friends. Happy crafting.